long for the community in Wesley Chapel to realize how impactful and meaningful these type of services and a complex like this is.
The team has been amazing. They are so excited. You go over there and take a tour. Deanna, Dennis, and the whole crew over there, they cannot wait to showcase this amazing facility for our citizens of Pasco County. Thank you to all the team there.
Hi, I'm Angelo Lorenzo, Regional Manager at the New River Library. We're putting on the final touches at your favorite branch. There are lots of changes inside and out, starting with the parking. As you know, we've moved the entrance drive to the east side of the building, and on your way to the parking lot, you pass a book return kiosk, under cover from the elements, to keep you nice and dry when you're just dropping off a book. We've added new landscaping to the entrance and a bright new sign to keep you informed of events and happenings at the library at a glance. Inside, the flooring is complete, along with the ceilings and lighting. An expansive new front desk is the hub of the library, with friendly staff ready to assist you quickly and efficiently. The furniture, shelves, and fixtures are in place, and we're preparing to deliver the books to the branch soon. The Discovery Gardens at New River are the gem of the library. We'll have a variety of display gardens, sensory features, and of course, garden beds for your use. We've also installed a covered area for holding seminars and demonstrations. We know you're anxious to enjoy the remodeled New River Library, and we're eager to show it off. Follow our social media pages and pascolibraries.org for updates and for the opening date. Thank you.
All right. Can everybody hear me? I guess so. All right, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we'll stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, could we have the roll call, please?
Jamie Girardi,
Here.
Don Anderson, Peter Hansel, Jonathan Moody,
Here.
Christopher Poole, Chris Williams,
Here.
and Chairman Charles Gray.
Here. All right, and proof of publication, please.
The items were published in the Tampa Bay Times on May 18th, 2022, June 22nd, 2022, and July 6th, 2022.
All right, thank you very much. And I don't believe we have any minutes. So I'd like to welcome everybody today. We're the Planning Commission. We're appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we meet twice monthly. We serve as a local planning agency and hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. The Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. Anyone is in opposition to any comprehensive plan amendment, development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate Board of County Commissioner meeting. Those of you who are not familiar with the format of our meetings, I'll go over it briefly as follows. We have 3 sections: continuances, and it's been our custom to grant continuances if they're requested by the staff or the applicant for any number of reasons. We have consent, and those items are listed. We're going to go through those one at a time, and if nobody has any questions about those, or if they're not pulled off, if you want them pulled off, raise your hand. We will for discussion. And otherwise, we will go through consent, and those items will be approved all at one time. Then we have the regular items. Those are the items that we bring up for discussion, make presentations, and the audience will have a chance to ask questions as needed. Applicants will have 3 minutes to make their presentations, and respondents or questioners will have 3 minutes to ask questions. If we if anybody requests additional time prior to this meeting, at least 24 hours in writing, it's been our custom to grant additional time. And I think we have 1 request, if I'm not mistaken. And
That's correct. You do have 1 request, and that is for item P2, Cross Park Mpud.
Okay. So this is a good time. If any of you have phones, I'm sure most of you do, please put them on the silent position or turn them off. And before we start the regular meeting, and this is an opportunity, if anybody's here to talk about anything that's not on today's agenda, that's not listed on the agenda, please let us know, and this would be your opportunity to come forward and ask a question. Is there anybody that has anything to speak to that's not on today's agenda? Go raising your hand, sir. Come forward. When he gets up here, we'll swear everybody at one time. Madam Secretary, okay. We'll need to swear you in. We'll need to get your name and address, please. If you raise your right hand. And anybody who else is going to speak today, this would be an opportunity to stand and raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your name and address, sir?
My name is Henry A. Burnt. I live in 3440 Monte Rio Street, Newport Richey, Veterans Village. I brought pictures and stuff.
Okay, what's the topic that you want to discuss?
My neighborhood,
Okay, and that is Veterans Village?
yes.
Okay,
This neighborhood was dedicated from a U.S. Senator back in 1976. We moved in 1980. I moved in with my parents. This neighborhood was gorgeous. The road, Seven Springs, stopped at Prime Ranch. Sometime around 83, 84, I think, we can't even find, they opened it all the way to Eastlake. And now that road is parallel with 19. And it gets used and abused. I've called the county for, hey, can you take care of this? Well, the Audubon Society owns that. I call the Audubon Society. No, the county takes care of that. I can't get anybody to help me. I don't know if she's putting the pictures up. We got roads, the drains to the drain that drains the road to the lakes. The drain itself is not a drain, it's crumbled, it's gone. So how can you get water to the drain to the lake? The road floods all the time. Certain roads in there have been flooding for 40 years. I've been in that neighborhood since 1980. Now I own a home in there. I raised 2 kids, 8 grandkids. And I call. Most people don't even know where we are. You Google it, the front part of the neighborhood. Matter of fact, if you look on Mike Olson, tax collector, the first road has a whole nother name of a neighborhood. The back part of the neighborhood has a whole nother name. But the name is not for the whole neighborhood. There's no Veterans Village. They just deleted it. Since they opened that road, and so many cars come through there. Just the other day, I've taken pictures. I looked. The one island up front's got a gaping hole in it. I'm like, what the heck? Somebody hit a light pole. I'm looking. How they hit the light pole? They came in the neighborhood the wrong way. Drunk, probably. We've had houses hit. We've had people hit head on in 25 to 30 mile an hour zones, head on and die. We had one tree where 6 or 7 people hit that tree and died because they're going too fast. It's a running joke through the whole county. Oh, the zigzags in Vets Village, it's fun. I had 28 News out there. They looked up, they got tickets. Well, 3 sheets of warnings, not violations, warnings. And the top one, how do you give out a person a warning for 75 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour zone? How does that happen? We've had drunks hit houses. Oh, and the funny thing is, the islands where they have trees and stuff, they have curbs. But the sidewalk where pedestrians walk, no curb, the car could come right up and hit you. There's nothing to deter the car back. And the grass is only that far. And the cars are going by you 50 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour zone. Mm-hmm. It's a neighborhood. There's nothing indicating out front but a little dinky sign. I asked them to put a sign out front. Residential neighborhood. They put one this big. Nobody even looks at it. They put a flashing light in. I could sit at that flashing light. I could show you video. 20 cars go by. One car is doing 30. Every other car is doing 45, 50, and the light goes off because they're going too fast. And that's county workers. That's even police officers. Everybody just speeds through that neighborhood.
all right. Well, let me ask the staff, do we have anybody online or here that can respond to that, or we can put him in touch with?
There's no one currently here that can assist this gentleman, but we will definitely get his information and refer him to our public infrastructure team.
I had a special meeting with Kathy Starkey about this. She showed up late. She walked in and even said she forgot she even had the meeting, and then proceeded to not have any information on what I was talking about. Didn't even know what road I was talking about until I had to explain it to her.
Okay.
And I sent her email after email after email, all the things I had complaint with. She shows up to the meeting, doesn't know what I'm talking about, and then gets out and walks out on me in the meeting.
Okay, well, I think what we need to do is get you to the person that's responsible for that area.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, Kelly Funk with County Administration is right behind the gentleman, and she'll get his information.
You also reach out to me. I can get you
All right. Thank you for coming. Good luck. I hope we can solve that problem for you.
I'll probably be back to the next one.
Okay, well, you're always welcome. Well, one time in 30 years isn't too bad. Okay. Is there anybody else? Okay. Take it away.
I wasn't sure whether anyone else was here for public comment.
No, I asked. They said.
Okay.
I didn't see anybody.
Excellent. All right, so, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission members, Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development, we're going to go a bit out of order because you do have a regular agenda and an addendum agenda, and I do want to say that I want to profusely apologize for you getting this addendum agenda after 6 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I greatly apologize. I will make it my mission for this to never happen ever again. So the first item is PC1. That's PDD 2275A2. This is a zoning amendment for Denton Place Mpud Master Plan Unit Development, DCH Timber LLC. This is a rezoning from AC Agricultural to an Mpud. This item was advertised as a continuance. The request is to continue the item to the August 4th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
All right. Do I hear, is there anybody here to speak to this? Ain't no one. Do I hear a motion to continue?
I move to continue.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries.
I'm going to move on to the next advertised continuance item, which is in your addendum. It's APC5,
Okay.
and that is PDD 227614, 54 Crossing Mpud, Colwell Avenue Properties 4 LLC. And the request is to continue the item to the August 4th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Okay.
I'll move to continue.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to continue and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
We're going to stay on your addendum agenda because the next item is a consent item, and we typically do continuances and then consent items.
Right.
So the next item is APC6. It's a zoning amendment, PDD 227563 for Palmetto Ridge Mpud Master Plan Unit Development, Palmetto Ridge Cattle Company LLC. This is it for a rezoning from an Mpud Master Plan Unit Development District to an Mpud Master Plan Unit Development District to change the name of the Mpud, and this was formerly called Fort King Ranch, and to allow the development of a maximum of 2,500 residential units, detached and attached, 50,000 square feet of commercial uses, a 49.24 more or less acre potential school site, a 5.03 more or less acre potential public safety site, and 2,000 more or less acres of open space recreation on approximately 3,535.79 acres. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
All right. Is the applicant present? Anybody here to object? Any objections?
So I believe that is the last of your consent item because APC 7, which is Pasco Town Center, will be pulled. There are some folks here that have signed up to speak in opposition
Okay,
to the item.
so if that's the last one, then have a motion to approve the consent items.
Move to approve.
We have a
I'll
mo-
second.
we have a motion and a second to approve consent as modified. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
All right, we're going to move a little bit out of order again. So please forgive. So we're going to move on to item P3, which is PDD 227613. This item is on your regular agenda, but that is because it is a request for multifamily. And we have a policy that if there's a request for multifamily, it is to be on the regular agenda. We have not received any folks in opposition to this item, nor any folks that have been signed up, that are signed up to speak on WebEx on the item. If you would indulge me and allow me to read it into record, and if you would call for any public comment.
Okay.
So that one is PDD 227613. It's a zoning amendment in the name of Stillwell Pasco Station Mpud for a change in zoning from an AC agricultural and AR agricultural residential district to an Mpud master plan unit development district to allow for a maximum of 285 multifamily dwelling units. It comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
All right. Is the applicant present?
The applicant is virtually present. Ms. Will Height is on.
All right. I think are you the applicant back there? You raised your hand?
There are folks from the team here.
Oh, okay. Fine, fine. Anyone here to object? See no objections? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve item PDD 227613.
A second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
The next item is going to be P4. It's a very similar situation. It is on your regular agenda because there is a request for multifamily. We have not received any letters of objection or anyone in opposition to this item. So if I would please read it into the record. On this item, you're sitting as a local planning agency. And what we're asking you to do is find it consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. And this is PDD 220364. It's CPAS 2213, a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment in the name of Viceroy Apartments. It's for a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment to the future land use map 2-15 and sheet 18 from Res 9 residential 9 dwelling units per gross acre to Res 24 on approximately 2.1 acres of real property located on the west side of Wood Trails Boulevard, north of Old County Road 54. Again, this item, we're asking that you find it consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval to the board, and if you would please call for public comment.
All right. Is there any public comment? Anyone here to speak on this matter? See no one. Hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay.
And the following item is going to be P2, and my colleague Amy Heiler will be presenting that, and then after that, we'll be doing Pasco Town Center.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. Amy Heiler with Long Range Planning. The item you're about to hear is Cross Park Mpud. You may have recalled this. I previously brought this to the Planning Commission or LPA a few months back for a requested comprehensive plan amendment to the existing plan development. So we'll go through the presentation. It's PDD 22-7632. The subject site is located in the South Market area in Commissioner District 4. As you see here, the subject site is located off of State Road 54 at the southeast corner of 54 and Henley Road. The zoning request is from an Mpud Master Plan Unit Development District to an Mpud Master Plan Unit Development District to allow for the development of 280 multifamily units, 45,000 square feet of medical professional office, and 10,000 square feet of retail on approximately 20.916 acres. The applicant is proposing the following variations to LDC Section 8056, which is restrictions on post-development wetlands and upland buffers within residential lots and non-residential parcels, and LDC Section 902.2M for stormwater management requirements, as well as LDC Section 9013 access management. So I'll go through those. The following requests for variation on the first one, which is 805.6 and 902.2, is requesting a variation to allow for the open space, drainage areas, common areas, landscape areas, wetland areas, buffer, preservation, conservation, recreation, and park areas to be under one single ownership, because it is a multifamily and not a single family complex. So they'll be having that under one single ownership within the HOA or CDD that they establish. And the second one is Section 901.3 access management, which basically says that you shall provide safe access to land development while preserving the flow of traffic in terms of safety, capacity, and speed. This is for the frontage roads within this development, and they're requesting to deviate the code by not requiring the access to the eastern boundary. The reason why we're accepting this, or staff is recognizing that it meets the intent of the code, is because on the eastern boundary it is bound by a swift mud drainage as well as a Category 1 wetland, and there's very specific policy in the comprehensive plan that says we cannot impact wetlands for those purposes. So with that, staff recommends that we find the analysis, or staff has determined that the variation meets the code for these purposes. So here's the master plan that they had submitted, and as you see, there's two access points. One is going to be off of Henley, the other is going to be off of State Road 54 with a secondary emergency access off of Henley. And I've zoomed in a little bit so we can go into detail on the master plan. This area is going to be the proposed medical office complex of 45,000 square feet located along State Road 54. We negotiated with the property owner and the applicant to ensure that this is located along State Road 54 and preserved frontage for viable non-residential employment generating land uses to align with the policy directive from the board. And then the multifamily product that they're proposing is 280 dwelling units. They are also proposing an additional 10,000 square feet in this area, where 5,000 square feet is going to be vertically integrated within the multifamily. The other 5,000 square feet is going to be located along the frontage of State Road 54 and proposed to be a pet center or an amenity to the multifamily. And the findings of fact, we can go through those. So the findings of fact, as you see here, the subject site's located along State Road 54 on the northern edge of the development and Henley Road to the western edge of the development. As previously stated, there's currently a planned development that's accompanying this project. You will be hearing that at the next public hearing, or I guess you guys already heard it. So never mind, the board will be hearing that at the next public hearing. It is in the name of Cross Park PD, which is a text amendment to the existing sub-area policy, FLU 7.1.17 Cross Park. The subject site, where am I at? Category 1 wetlands. So we have approximately 18% of the site is a Category 1 wetland, which is identified in the master plan, and the Cross Park Mpud will utilize this feature as an amenity and open space for trails and open spaces. There's adequate transit options with various bus stops located along State Road 54 to service this area. The conceptual plan also, or there is a conceptual or planned trail along State Road 54, which is identified on our Greenways and Blueways Trails map, and the proposed request is consistent with the Pasco County LDC Chapter 400, Section 402.2, zoning amendments, Mpud master plan unit development, and applicable provisions of Pasco County Comprehensive Plan. So with that being said, PDD recommends approval to the Board of County Commissioners, or with conditions, excuse me. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here and online.
Okay. Do we have questions, Chris?
Amy, I just have a couple questions. I was trying to remember, this came to us before, right?
Correct.
So what has changed since then?
So what's
You may have
happening
said that.
here is what they're actually doing is converting the assisted living facility.
Okay, right.
So this is that assisted living facility that they're converting to a multifamily component. At the previous public hearings, what was discussed was ensuring that the negotiations between converting the assisted living to multifamily showed a greater impact on the area. It was consistent with the surrounding area. And then one of the conditions of the sub-area policy was actually binding the fact that we are going to require the 45,000 square feet of employment generating land uses, whereas the original sub-area policy in Mpud did not do that. So.
Okay. And then my other question concerning that trail, can you tell me a little bit more about that, or do you have more
which one?
information? The one that you said is going from the Suncoast Parkway to
Yep.
Oakstead.
So the reason why that's there is that it's identified on the Greenways and Blueways Trails map. So it's a conceptual trail along State Road 54. We are just ensuring that connections will occur to that trail, but we don't have any conditions yet because it's conceptual.
But we're not sure what, any more specifics on what that trail
Yeah,
will
and
be
I'm not
yet,
sure
or
like what side it's going to be
Yep.
on or anything like
Okay.
that. So
All
we're
right.
just ensuring that if it does occur on this side, there's going to be a level connection.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from up here? All right. Any questions, anything from the audience? Anybody else would like to speak on it or have questions? If not, is there a motion?
Move to approve item PDD 227632.
The applicant.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Said move to
Motion to
approve
approve.
item PDD 227632.
And you second it?
Well, we didn't second it yet. I think Jamie had a
Is the
question.
applicant present, or is the applicant?
The applicant is both online and in the
Okay.
audience.
Hi, Elise Batzel, Stearns Weaver Miller. I thought you were going right into the vote, but we're happy to. We do have a separate presentation. A lot of it is duplicative of what Amy has already provided. So perhaps if you have questions, we can answer those, or we'd be happy to go through our full presentation, whatever is the board's preference.
I personally don't have any questions. I know
Yeah.
we talked quite a bit about this stuff whenever the PD was coming through,
Right.
so, or the future land
Okay.
comp plan amendment. I'll second the motion.
We hate to make it that easy on you, though.
I am here at your disposal.
Oh, shouldn't have said that. All right, so we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second, yeah.
All right. Okay. No further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. That was my easiest hearing of the day.
Remember that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission members. Welcome back, Mr. Moody.
Thank you.
Tammy Snyder, Planning and Development. Gracias. All right, here we have the Pasco Town Center MPUD, PDD 227566. Here's a location map. That is State Road 52 running east to west on the north, and that is I-75 on the western boundary. Proposed as a rezoning request from an AC agricultural and C2 general commercial zoning districts to an MPUD to allow the development of 4 million square feet of industrial and support uses, 725,000 square feet of office, 400,000 square feet of retail, 300 hotel rooms, and 3,500 residential dwelling units on approximately 966.87 acres. The applicant is also seeking variations from the LDC, Section 907.1, on-site parking. They're requesting to reduce from the required 2.25 spaces to 1.9 spaces. And Section 526.3.A.1, sale or consumption of alcoholic beverages. They are requesting a distance waiver for the portions of the site that are to be developed in a mixed-use pattern. A lot of uses will be allowed in close proximity, and some of them may sell alcohol for on-site and off-site consumption. So therefore, a distance requirement for alcohol sales, yes, would limit or restrict the types of uses that would be allowed in an urban-style development. And staff has reviewed these proposed variations and recommends approval as this is proposed to be a mixed-use urban class development with a compact, multimodal design and access to many amenities within close proximity, which necessitates the requested variations. And here's their master plan. The subject site is currently vacant, and it is in the South Market area and in the urban expansion area. There is an approved economic development agreement between the applicant and Pasco County, and a small portion of the site to the southern end retains its agricultural future land use and will be reserved for future development. The proposed request is consistent with the approved EDA, the Pasco County LDC Chapter 400, MPUDs, and with the applicable provisions of the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan. And with that, PDD recommends approval to the BCC with conditions.
Thank you. All right. So do we have any questions? Nothing? Okay. Applicant present?
Good afternoon, Chairman Gray, ladies and gentlemen. Joel to and Associates. I represent the property owner, which is the applicant. I'm land use counsel and I have been sworn. I'm just going to give a very brief overview to supplement what Tammy has told you. This is that southeast quadrant of State Road 52 I-75. It's been designated by the county as a major employment center on the comprehensive plan for more than 15 years, perhaps 20 years, but never previously zoned. The property, I think, had several false starts with potential buyers. My client actually closed upon the property in December, and they own it. So they're the proud owners. And we spent the first 6 months of the year working with David Engel, who's here for the Office of Economic Growth and the County Commission and the administrator. And on June 7th, just last month, the County Commission approved the Economic Development Agreement, which is a public-private partnership to construct over $70 million, that's $70 million worth of roadway and utility infrastructure to kick off this employment center. My client will be front-ending virtually all of that money and then getting future tax increment rebates for the value that they enhance. They will get a portion of that ultimately to reimburse over many years, likely 10 to 15 years, some of that infrastructure costs. The county is coming out of pocket to help with some of the utilities for the master utility infrastructure. So it is a major economic development project. As you can tell from the magnitude of the employment entitlements, we're talking about thousands and thousands of jobs, which Mr. Engel can speak to. So the Economic Development Agreement basically says that we are to implement an MPUD zoning that is consistent with two things. One is the EC future land use, which of course we have to comply with, and secondly are the terms of the Economic Development Agreement. So we believe, staff agrees, and Mr. Engel can speak for himself, but I believe he agrees that this proposed MPUD is entirely consistent with both the EC future land use requirements and also the Economic Development Agreement requirements. If we could put back up the MPUD plan just very briefly, Denise, I don't know if you have that handy. It was just
Patty's running the show,
Patty.
so she'll
It was
pull it
just
for you.
up on Tammy's presentation, that master plan she referred to, about 2 or 3 slides from the end of her presentation. Back, probably one, that's it. Thank you. So this is the conceptual Mpd plan, and the reason I'm putting that up is we've worked out with the county attorney's office and PDD. There are specific land area allocations to guarantee the county that at the end of the day, we allocate and use the land for those employment uses the way the comp plan requires. And simply stated, we must use at least 55% of the land. Now, in this case, we're dealing with almost 1,000-acre project, so we're talking about over 500 acres of land must be allocated and used for corporate business park, targeted business, or industrial use, the EC preferred uses. We then must use at least 20% for residential uses, but they can't be single-family detached. So everything has to be multifamily or townhomes to support the employment center. And then finally, we have to use at least 5% for support commercial uses for the employment center. We are retaining, even though we're a standalone MPUD and we're not opting into Connected City, we are retaining, from the planning standpoint, that urban center. If you look down in the southern third, you see the hashed area. It's on the north and south side of what will be the extension of Tyndall Avenue. That square area was designated conceptually in Connected City as basically an urban town center. We're still going to plan that, so we will use some of these multifamily and office and retail uses to create this town center in the southern portion. Virtually everything north of that will be those employment uses all the way up to 52. We are starting development, obviously, from State Road 52 in the north with that infrastructure coming in. We're working with DOT and the county now. The county's assisting greatly to be sure we've got good access at McKendree and our other primary entrance on 52. To the extent that we have the residential component, we have inserted the board's current monotony control and architectural standards, which you've been seeing for townhome products, the treescaping, the limitations on on-street parking, and the variation in building architecture. Those are included. And then lastly, this one is a little easier than a lot of massive MPUDs. Normally you have to wrestle with the transportation mitigation. In this case, we did that first. In this case, the transportation mitigation was obviously the essence of the economic development agreement, because that's a large chunk of that $70 million that we have to spend to build roadways. So the EDA already has all of the transportation and utility mitigation. The access management study was approved incident to that review. And so at this point, it's really just implementing the MPUD itself. The only other thing I was going to comment on, but I defer to Mr. Williams, why don't you state your concern first, and then I want to volunteer on the record what I promised you that we would tell you.
Good, thank you. So when I was reviewing it this morning, I noticed something and which concerns me, and I called Mr. Tu about it. So back when this was being conceptualized back in 2007, the residential entitlements here were about 1,750 units. And then I noticed in this, now it's up to 3,500 units, which is a considerable impact to schools. And so I expressed to Mr. Tu my concern. Again, we are not sure. We're not saying we absolutely need a school, but that raises a concern because that would generate probably at least a half an elementary school and obviously some middle, and we're not looking for a high school, of course, here, but maybe elementary or KA might work. But again, we're not sure we need one. But then I called Mr. Tu and said, here's my concern. The residential entitlements have doubled. I at least want to have some conversation. So, and then Mr. Tu was very helpful, and so go ahead.
And I promised Mr. Williams that I would state on the record, and I have conferred with my client, the owner, and for the record, we understand that concern. I told Mr. Williams that we kind of got the cart ahead of the horse because it's very unusual, as you know, for the development agreement to actually precede the zoning. But everybody was in a hurry to get these employment uses off the ground to get infrastructure going. So the short answer is that under the EC future land use, these commitments we've had to make for minimum land uses, if you add up the minimum percentages, they're 55% for employment, 20% for residential, 5% for support commercial. When you add those up, you're only at 80%. So the mandatory minimums under employment center only consume 80% of the land. So the good news, which is what I told Chris, is we have 20% of the land area. And again, in this case, that's almost 200 acres because it's a 1,000-acre project. So we have a lot of land that's not committed to those required employment uses. In particular, down in the urban center, and I discussed this with him, as we're doing in VOPH, the urban center possibly would be a great location to integrate an urban campus setting, which the school district likes very much now. So one option is we're happy to work with him as we go forward. Once we get to the point of working on the urban center, seeing if he's interested in an urban, either K-8 or elementary school site that we could integrate there. And barring that, we also have the land, frankly, from that point southward. Everything at the southern end, and particularly the stuff down on McKendree there, that's in brown, that is the current agricultural land that's not subject to EC. A location there on McKendree might be a great place for an elementary or K-8 at the southern end. So we have plenty of land available. I've given him the direct contacts with my client, whom I'm introducing to him today, and they're going to stay in touch. And I told Chris that the client will commit that they're happy to work with the school district as they go forward planning. And if the school district decides they need a site in the southern part of this MPUD, we will do everything possible to accommodate and work out terms for that school site. So it will not be an issue for the developer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, Joel.
All right.
And we're happy to answer any questions. We're not going to belabor this. Our team is here, can answer any technical question. Mr. Engel may want to make some comments before we go to public comment. And then if it's acceptable, I'll just reserve any response to public comment if you don't have questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do want to mention for the record that that ex parte communication has been documented with the clerk's office.
Okay.
And the ex parte communication with other planning commission members through email as well.
Very good, Brad.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I appreciate the applicant being willing to look at the school site and provide what's, but just to be clear, the county hasn't reviewed the location of the school. County hasn't reviewed the location of the school site as far as consistency with the connected city and other things like that. That wasn't included in our review. So we would need to look at that. We agree that a school is possible in this area somewhere. So we don't have any concerns with that. It's just, I don't want to commit to it being in that urban core right away. We would need to figure out where it works best.
All right. So noted?
So noted.
All right. So, David, Mr. Engel, would you like to speak?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. David Engel, Office of Economic Growth. I'm the Economic Growth Director. Mr. Tu is correct. The Board of County Commissioners on June 7th adopted and passed an economic development agreement for this project. It's vitally important for our economic future because it is the heart of the employment center area on the I-75 Route 52 employment node. This project will provide the infrastructure, the public spine roads and the master utility lines for this property's employment center area, as well as to the east on the other side of McKendree for the Abbey Crossing property. We wanted to make sure that the elements of the economic development agreement were carried through to the Mpud level, and we were involved with your planning staff extensively over the last couple of weeks. And what we did was the following. We made sure that there's ample land to fulfill the 4 million square foot industrial requirement because it's the linchpin of the EDA. So there's ample land included on the westerly side of Road A, but we did provide some additional optional property for industrial development contiguous on the easterly side in the event the FARs are such where we need additional land. We also made an adjustment to the loom chart, which is, I think, Exhibit A in your package. That loom chart reflects the fact that they can't modify or use equivalency alterations to the industrial area except for up to 500,000 square feet of corporate office. Thirdly, the industrial area, the industrial business park, will comply with the provisions of industrial park in the Connected City overlay plan. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of the consistency with the EDA. If you have any questions about the project from an economic standpoint, I can answer them.
All right. Any questions up here?
Thank you, sir.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we do have some folks that have signed up to speak on the matter. The first person that signed up to speak is Lauren Levy.
Okay. Ms. Levy, would you like to come forward? welcome. If you could just say your name and address, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Levi, 9432 McKendree Road.
Okay, and you've been sworn, right? Ms. Levi,
Oh,
you've been sworn?
yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My family home has been there for 50 years now. They built it in 1972. And they built it with their own sweat and blood. My mom did all the installation. My aunt did all the stonework on the fireplace. My grandfather was the architect of the home. So this is our home. And this is a huge, huge build. And we really just want to make sure that we're protected. The reason I'm expressing all of this to you is to remind you that we are farmers and families who don't know anything else other than our small town. So to have a massive industrial building come in and the population it's going to generate is a huge change to our way of life. The noise pollution, the light pollution, the gas pollution, and as I can see on the map plans for Pasco County cities, the water pollution as well, since the planned mixed-use development is to cut down the cypress trees and build a new road. The reason I mention the cypress trees is because they're helping soak up floodwaters, which is important considering we live in Florida, where there's an average of 53.7 inches of rain a year. The cypress is also preventing erosion, not to mention where the cypress trees are located as a water reservoir, which is going to poison our well water, which is our drinking water, our animals' drinking water, our bathing water, etc. The cypress mentioned might be covered under the Wetlands Preservation Law Executive Order 11990. I work in construction. I am all for growth in communities, but I am concerned for all the wildlife we have here. Gators walk across the property. We have around 50 turkeys that like to hang out for a few hours a day. We have multiple sandhill cranes that come to feed naturally on our property. Think about how a tunnel is being built under I-4 due to one single bear trying to cross an interstate and how much money that is now costing. How can we equate that into this build? My family and I have done a lot for our communities. My father was a law enforcement officer for 30 years. My uncle was a major for Pasco County Sheriff's Office. My husband, God rest his soul, was a law enforcement officer for 15 years. So protection is ingrained in me. I'm worried. Currently, the law enforcement response time where we are located is a minimum of 40 minutes. How are you going to protect us? Are you going to give us camera systems? Are you going to put in an alarm system? Build a 6-foot block wall fence around our property to protect us? No. In May 21st, 2022, right at Brandon Mall, there was an active shooter. You can't tell me that it's not realistic to think that that situation might happen right across the street from me. So what are you going to do to protect me? The 3,000 homes that will be built, they know what they are moving into. You are changing our way of life, and I want to know I'm going to be protected. I hope if you do make the decision to rezone, you at least find a way to protect us from the criminals that are bound to roam. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you show us on the map where your property is?
Their property is right here.
That entire triangle there.
The little triangle right there?
Yes.
Okay.
And how big is that property?
20 acres.
Okay.
Okay. Did you have any suggestions on how they could protect you? Are you making suggestions, or are you just asking for suggestions?
If they want to build a, like I said, a 6-foot block wall fence around my 20 acres, that would be great. I mean, there's people constantly hitting my fence as it is now. People are going to be taking McKendree Road. I have to fix my fence every couple of months from someone hitting my fence. There's going to be thousands of people on these roads now, and they're going to take McKendree Road just like we all take back roads as it is now to avoid traffic. They're going to take McKendree Road, and people are going to constantly hit my fence. And like I said, the population it's going to generate, anywhere that becomes a heavily populated area, you now have criminals. We don't have people just walking down the road. Now we're going to. I'm going to have people looking at my house. It makes me feel very uncomfortable.
I might be able to help with that. I'm Brad, by the way, we spoke.
Yes.
Brad, Tippett Planning Development, something to consider here is that currently McKendree Road does come right along the frontage of this property. The realignment for McKendree Road actually moves it over. So when this gets to be a more intense area, that traffic is going to be farther away from
But that would be if the cypress are able to be cut down, because like I said, I think it might be under the Wetlands Preservation Act.
All right, thank you, Brad. All right, thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions up here?
I know for her.
No, okay. All right, and was there someone else who wanted to speak to Denise?
Yes, the next person is Carol Roth.
Okay. Yes, that's fine, take your time.
Can you just say that again from the mic? No, I'm done. Okay.
Testing. You want to have a seat and you can use a handheld mic?
I think I'm okay if I can hang on.
Okay.
I'll let you know if I'm going to
Okay, we'll
fall.
keep it close by.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Hang close there,
Chairman and
Brad.
Commissioners. My name is Carol Roth. I'm the owner of 9432 McHenry Road,
And where is that on the map?
where my granddaughter showed you.
Oh, the same place, okay.
Right. When we came into this area, it was beautiful and peaceful. It was serene. We've seen changes over the years, but we never lost the peacefulness and serenity. Now, progress comes, and it has, but we have changed with it. I feel it is the obligation of Pasco County government to protect me and my land and my environment as you allow for growth for business and other people. I've lived there over 50 years. I built that home, and I've enjoyed what I have. I've enjoyed its inherent beauty. I don't know if people around here are familiar with rural Pasco, but it's a distinct beauty. I am reassured that the FFWCC has allowed for nesting habitats for the local species and are protecting the nesting areas for the kestrels, sand cranes, wading birds. I'm also encouraged that they're going to find and protect and relocate the gophers. But these are immediate needs. What's the county doing for long-term protection for when our wildlife migrates? We have wildlife that comes south, that nests in that area. What have you done to protect them? Also, my property has a variance that allows for power gliders. According to the zoning standards, aircraft and helicopter landing fields subject to approval by the Federal Aviation Administration and compliance with appropriate state and local laws provide that no aircraft, landing field, or helicopter pad shall be located within 100 feet from the closest property line of a school that provides a curriculum of elementary or secondary academy instruction and middle or high schools. Also, no parachute drops. You mentioned, Commissioner, that you were concerned about education with this influx of children. Well, they're going to want education. What's going to happen to my variance when they find out can't put the school there? Because it's right in your own zoning code. So I have many concerns. I don't want to bore you with all of them, but I feel, quite frankly, that changing McHenry Road to Boyette, however you want to do it, I own a business on that road. I'm a psychologist. I get checks in the mail from insurance companies. I'm sorry, just let me continue a second.
Go ahead.
I get checks in the mail from insurance companies. I have no way of, I even would have to change my Medicare standard because of a change of address. There's federal law regarding that. this would be such a burden for me to go from 9432 McKendree Road to 9432 Boyette. It'd be impossible for me to even notify everybody. So I'm questioning the need to change that name. If you want to name something Boyette, put it in the development. Why change the road I'm on? So in conclusion, quite frankly, I'm asking you, how are you protecting me? What are you doing for the people that are there now? Because we're going to be the ones suffering the impact. I'm not against growth. I'm not against progress. Everybody has a right to move on. But I am against the impact of this type of project without the commission taking into consideration that yes, it's going to bring in taxes. Yes, it's going to bring in jobs. Yes, you're going to make a lot of money out of it. But what happens to the little people who own 20 acres right across the street? How are we going to protect my house from crime? As my granddaughter said, my fence gets broken every other, I'd say 4 or 5 months apart, from speeders going down that road, because McKendree is a straight run. And then my house is the curve. So how are you going to protect me? Are you going to put up a wall there so they don't hit me? I've been asking for years for the county's help on that. I've even asked them to put a buffer, and they refused. So what are you going to do? Since you haven't helped me in the past, how are you going to help me now? That's my question.
All right, thank you. Do you have any questions for this young lady? Questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Come, Ziva, this way. Come this way.
Hi, Brad Tippin, Planning and Development. Just wanted to speak a little bit to that. This is the same property that we spoke about before. There is a zoning action on that property, but that zoning action did take into consideration Connected City and the type of development that's expected in Connected City. So we don't anticipate that there are going to be any conflicts with the issue as far as the landing field that they have based on what they have in their conditional use, I believe, correct? So that's been addressed already. As far as the road, as like I was mentioning before, the actual road realigns. So the bulk of the traffic will actually be going farther away from this property. So more of the through traffic that would be that faster traffic that she's speaking of would probably be offset from this property in the future, just based on the current plans.
And what about the renaming, Brad?
The renaming, David, would you like to speak to the renaming? Sure. He puts it much more succinctly than I can.
Thank you, David Engel, Pasco County again. We've had a request about the renaming from Boyette, and the county administrator has directed that that road be named McKendree from State Road 52 south to Old Overpass Road, so it won't be changed in this area.
So she'll still have the McKendree address?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I mean, or Denise or Brad, I mean, certainly as that develops, there certainly are buffer regulations for whether it be landscapes, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe Mr. Tu could come up and talk about the buffering. And I think that's a critical part for, as far as they're concerned.
Yes, sir. As Mr. Williams just alluded to, well, first of all, as I said, we're going to start development from the north. This is probably a 10 to 15-year build-out. But as we get to the southern extreme in that flex area, we can't even say today what use would be there. I mean, we can all stand here and look at it and say most likely your residential is going to be in the southern part. So the odds are extremely high that we will have residential uses in the southern part south of the urban center, which certainly will be compatible with surrounding residential uses. But regardless of, as we come in with site plan and preliminary plan review, the land development code will specify those setbacks, the buffers, you know, the landscaping, the distance, depending on our use. And obviously we can't put an incompatible use next to them without buffering that in accordance with the code. And most importantly, the best thing in my view, that can happen to them. If they really want to keep their 20 acres and their enclave and stay there and not redevelop or self-redevelopment, if they just choose to stay there, the best thing for them is that the county's master roadway plan and the Connected City master roadway plan, it dictates that alignment that we're showing for New McKendree. So the good news is it's actually going to get pushed completely away from their property. They will have land between that road and them to actually buffer them from the new roadway, and their part of that will essentially become not a private road, but let's just say a secondary road that's only there to serve those existing properties. So I think the road realignment is a great help to them if they wish to just keep their enclave. And yes, we will have to buffer in accordance with Land Development Code, depending on what use, and Brad's team obviously will enforce that when we come in for site plans.
Yeah, so what we're saying is that there'll be a secondary opportunity for them to review what you want to do there and have their input in terms of buffering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we know that use, I mean, this developer obviously intends on being a good neighbor, and we'll work with anyone that stays there and is affected to work on compatible uses and buffering and keep everyone happy. We're a long way from being to any site plan on the southern part of this property. I mean, literally years away.
Like you said, probably 10 or 15 years from now.
Yes, sir. And I do just note for the record, I understand that they have their enclave there, and I certainly respect that. But from the planning standpoint, again, the county put Employment Center future land use on this land 15, 20 years ago. And only 5 years ago, the county adopted the Connected Cities master plan. And their property is in the Connected Cities master plan, and their property actually is designated as part of the business core in the Connected City master plan. So they don't have to develop. You know, the way that works is it's an opt-in plan. But if they do opt in, they can actually avail themselves of business core density in terms of future value if they ever decide to sell or develop. But they don't have to. But that plan dictates, we're only doing, frankly, what the adopted comp plan requires us to do at this point. But we'll do everything we can to buffer any of those interim uses around us. We understand and respect that.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure you'll be happy to share your business card with those people. Right? Okay, thank you, Joe.
Mr. Chair, the last person that is signed up, but you may want to call if there's any others, Kim Britt, or that's what it looks like it says here.
Thank you. I am the daughter of the previous woman and the mother of Lauren Levi, 9432 McKendree Road, and I too have both sworn in. So, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the third family member of this home. And I had a prepared item. I did want to address the fact that regardless that the southern part of this property won't be developed for 15 years, whatever is happening on the north part will still have an impact on us as far as traffic, construction, and so forth. So, but on the whole part, I do want to address the light pollution that's going to be created, from what I can understand, will be 55% industrial construction, 3,500 multi-purpose homes in 15 years, with 1.9 cars. I don't know how that works. So, but you can say approximately 4,500 cars in that neighborhood. Street lighting for the new roads, 300-room hotel, plus the other proposed additions. All this illumination will make us lose something essential as we lose access to the night sky. The sense of stillness and awe will have a significant impact on the enjoyment of our property. I'll address noise pollution. Noise pollution is unwanted or disturbing sound in the environment that affects the health and well-being of humans and other living organisms. They mentioned that they are going to buffer and move the road, but it's still going to have a deep impact on the sound. Right now, we hear the animals do not hear the traffic going up and down or in that area. The traffic on McKendree Road right now is only like 50 cars, but I apologize. They say that they're going to move the road, so I can't even say that the traffic will have a big impact on us at this time. But, and I don't know where Boyette's going to cut off and McKendree Road will start and how that's going to work. So I appreciate that we're going to get a business card, because I'd like to sit down and have them explain exactly all those drawings I have watched and seen on these properties. But I'd like to reiterate that the light, noise pollution and increased traffic generated will have a profound impact on our property. And as growth increases and our daughter, and I know from crime, it's going to expose our property. And something does need to be done to help us.
Okay, any questions? Any comments? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, sharing. All right, does the applicant have any other comments to make?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Engel, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So any further discussion up here, any motions?
Well,
Questions?
I've lived in Pasco County for almost my entire life. Moved here at the age of 6. And I understand, and out where you live was nowhere. And in some ways, it's still nowhere. But unfortunately, it's not going to be nowhere forever. And we can't stop Tampa from expanding northward. It's going to bring a lot of jobs, probably desperately needed jobs. But I understand, I live on property too. And I won't pay for the street lights to be on in my neighborhood because I like the night sky too. But I can't guarantee that the next 100-acre tract over or the one after that's not going to get built on. I don't own it. So I know it's tough, and government has to make decisions sometimes too. They plan a new roadway. Sometimes it goes right through somebody's living room, ruins somebody else's backyard. I look at what US 19 was through Pinellas County years ago. And now it's this limited access highway with all these on and off ramps, and all those businesses that were located alongside the road are now out of business because this new road took them out. But I don't think there's anything we can do to stop that kind of growth. The population continues to grow. The people up north keep coming. And from the looks of things, it looks like they're going to keep coming. And at least in my mind, being located at the intersection of a major interstate highway is a logical place for growth to be expected. And I agree with Mr. Tu, it's probably going to be a long time before it actually gets far enough south to affect your property directly. But inevitably it's coming. And I guess someday probably my own property will get affected too, but we have to move on. Joel, when's the first site plan anticipated? You said maybe years before we get down to that end. Just curious of the timing. I saw some things in the agreement that had 2024 deadlines on them.
Correct, Mr. Moody. Joel, too, for the applicant. Under the EDA, we're actually obligated to proceed as soon as possible with design plans, engineering, and permitting. So I think the answer to that is as soon as they can get phase 1 plans and permits through Mr. Tippin's office, they certainly hope to start that northern end of the property coming off of 52 next year to start site work on the north end, at the extreme north end. reconfiguring the McKendree intersection with 52. We're working with DOT now and Flying J to reconfigure those access points just east of the interstate, which are a little bit messed up right now, even with the new construction. So we're trying to fix all that. So the short answer is next year, we hope to get permits to at least start site infrastructure with the Phase 1 roads and utilities as we promised Mr. Engel and the County Commission. But just that northern third, let's say, is kind of the swath of Phase 1, is roughly the northern third of that property.
All right.
I mean, I'll echo what John just said. I mean, obviously, growth is coming. The fortunate part is that it's planned growth. It's growth that's been given a lot of thought. There are things out there that, obviously we talked about the relocation of the road. You also have all the environmental regulations, all the development regulations. We talked briefly about buffering. Brad's office spends a lot of time giving developers and engineers a hard time with everything they want to do out there. So it's again, growth's coming. Fortunately, it's been planned for, and it's been planned for years. It's inevitable. So
at least at this stage in time, we plan for the growth. When I came here as a child, there was no plan for growth. And in some ways, we suffer some of the consequences of not having any plan for growth. So we may not like some of the growth, but at least this is planned and is being done in an organized fashion. There's been thought put into roadways, utilities, and making sure that we have jobs to support all those rows of homes that we may see in the future.
Chris, any comment?
Well, just ditto what John and Jamie said. I don't know that I beat Mr. Gray, but my family's been here for 5 generations in Pasco County, so that's a long time, and my family's been here when there was literally hardly anybody here, and so it's hard to see growth. I mean, I live in the Dade City area, my family's from there, and it's hard to see it coming, but, I can't dictate what my neighbor decides they want to do with the property. Now, certainly we have input into how to make sure it's compatible and things like that. And that's what we as a body try to do, and try to do it to the best of our ability. But again, these are all difficult things, but again, folks have a right to develop their property as the market, dictates. And one day my kids will probably sell the land I'm on for, and take that money and do something good for them. So anyway, very difficult to do, but necessary.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think these are all good comments, and obviously, everybody up here is concerned about the lifestyles of the people that have lived here for many years. As Mr. Williams alluded to, I've lived here all my life, and my father before me, and my grandfather before him. So we're keenly aware of growth and how it affects areas that we once thought were going to be that way forever. And unfortunately, it just doesn't happen. Eventually, there's going to be growth. I mean, I guess they thought the same thing when they developed Fort Brooke, which is now Tampa. It's just something that we have to deal with. We have to plan for it. We have to try to protect the people as best we can with buffering and the way we design the roads and all the things that have been considered. And I think this has been well thought out by this developer, Mr. Engel, and Pasco County. There's going to be a lot of benefit. There's going to be downside as far as you're concerned because of the growth, but the upside is, at some stage, you may want to sell that property, and when you do, it's going to be worth a lot more money because of it. So, so there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I know that doesn't make you feel all warm and fuzzy, but at least it is a positive. So, Anyway, with that being said, I think we're ready to make a motion, are we?
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve, and we have a second. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Tu. Thank you, David. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm wondering if we should probably, because we do have a lot of folks out here, and I'm wondering if they're here for items that have already been discussed.
Well, is there anybody here that planned to speak that hadn't had an opportunity to speak about something that we've already talked about?
So the only two items that are left on the agenda right now are auto dealers and the changes to the flood ordinance. Okay. I figured we might lose a few people. Do you mind bringing my?
So if there's anybody that plans to speak, should be an opportunity to come up front here where you can get to the microphone.
Oh, that's 8 p.m. I messed up.
Okay.
Thank you, Patty. No, I so appreciate you. Okay, so this is item AP8 on your addendum agenda. And it's PDD 220454. So first, let's talk about why we're here. On this item, you're sitting as a local planning agency, first off. So earlier this year, the Board of County Commissioners directed a temporary moratorium on the opening or establishment of vehicle sales businesses. And on March 8th, Ordinance 2211 was adopted, and that's a 180-day moratorium on the establishment or opening of vehicle sales businesses, and that's new and used. So one of the concerns that the Board of County Commissioners had, not the only one, but one of them, is that there's a lot of overstocking of vehicles that are happening on these properties and safety and the safety concerns associated with them. So during the time from March until literally this point in time, staff has studied the issues, and we've had meetings with stakeholders from both the new auto dealers and used auto dealers. Brad Tippin has led the charge, and he's done an amazing job, as he usually does. We have had meetings our meetings occurred on April 13th and on June 8th of this year. And I'm not going to state every single person that we met with, but just to give you an idea, we met with the folks from Furman Auto Group, from Moss, from Spring Engineering, who designs many of these vehicle dealerships throughout the United States. We also met with the folks from Morgan Auto Group, and East Lake Auto Sales, I think, was the smaller business owner who does used auto sales. So we met with that team of folks. The item was presented at the Ordinance Development team on May 26, 2022. And basically, what we've done to Section 1101, which, as you know, was adopted in 2005. So basically what we did is we clarified the applicability of the section, changed some words because words matter. We broke down the section into a few different sections, which are basically general design standards that are applicable for auto dealers that were established or received site plans after 1/25 of 2005. The reason why that date is important is because that's when the vehicle dealership ordinance was adopted. So basically, in that section, there's general cleanup language, and that general cleanup language is mostly resulting because from the changes that we made earlier this year to change the type H buffer. As you probably recall, there was a 75-foot buffer for auto dealers. That was the type H buffer. Well, that type H buffer is now a 20-foot buffer. So there's a lot of cleanup needed in that section to deal with that. Then we created some additional design standards for sites that were approved after August 25th, 2022, which is when we expect this item to be adopted. It's going to be adopted the 24th, but it's going to get set to the state and stuff like that. The reason why we specifically broke this out this way is because some of the auto dealers folks that we met with in our stakeholders meeting said, well, we have approved sites, so we don't want to have to retrofit our sites to new standards if new standards are adopted, even though in many cases they're already following those standards. However, they just didn't want to have to retrofit. So basically, those standards discuss employee and customer parking. There's 4 different methods that you can choose. Learned a lot through this process that a lot of these vehicle dealers, I'm going to have a lot of side notes because I've learned a lot through this process, but a lot of these vehicle dealers actually deal with so BMW has specific standards, Mercedes has, I'm talking about cars that I really want, just saying, have specific standards, so they have to meet those standards, which may be more than what our land development code says in certain situations. So, basically, this discusses the vehicle inventory and vehicle storage, which is basically surface level inventory and display combined with ground floor area of buildings and structures cannot exceed 50% of the developable acreage. It cannot occupy required parking spaces. It cannot encroach into the right-of-way or any landscape buffer or wetland upland buffer or drainage pond. It has to be delineated on the site plans. There are allowance of triple tandem rows or quadruple tandem rows under certain instances. There's requirements for pedestrian connectivity. Again, these are the additional design standards for sites approved after August 25th, 2022. So these, the folks who have already approved sites, they don't have to retrofit.
What's a triple tandem road?
Oh, yeah, so the way that they actually stack the vehicles, so it's 3 rows, triple tandem, so they're stacked together, the way that the cars are stacked. So there's a requirement where you have to, also, I didn't mention that, but clearly you have to, it is in the ordinance, that you have to have some separation so that fire vehicles can get in between.
Okay.
So, sorry. Okay, so yeah, so this is the next one. So the next section is outdoor display and buffering standards. So these are actually standards that may, these are not must, it may be used by vehicle dealerships. So what happens is that we ask folks to have certain standards for outdoor display and buffering. So there are situations where you can plant a tree that might cause hardship with the stuff that's coming off the tree for the vehicles. So we're allowing some things to happen in lieu of the actual requirements that are in 1102 and 905. And this is May. So, I mean, if they've met the code requirements, not a problem, but if they want to have another option, this is the option. And this is the third section, which is things that they may use whether it was approved prior to 2022 or not. And this was presented to the horizontal roundtable and interested parties group on the 15th of June and the 20th of July. And didn't really have much commentary. We did have some commentary, but we made changes based on the commentary that we received after June 15th. And we're asking that you find it consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval to the board. And this is actually set for first reading is on 8/9 at 1:30 in Dade City, and the adoption on August 24th at 1:30 in Newport Richey. And I will say that we are within the 180-day temporary moratorium. So hopefully, if this gets adopted on the 24th, the moratorium expires in September. So we'll, promise kept.
Okay.
Here for any questions, and of course, Brad, who is the
Any
brainchild,
questions of Denise?
will be able to answer questions.
First off, you can tell you guys have been working on this for a long time because there's mentions in here about inventory, and car dealers and inventory don't go hand in hand lately.
That's right.
They need nails, one parking
Have
space.
plenty of parking right now.
Yeah, well, triple tandem is not an issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to what Denise said. Thank you, Denise. That was a very good synopsis of it. In that section that we talked about that she mentioned that where they may do some additional things, what we did was we tried to codify and allow some things that normally would take an additional process. We generally allowed those things to occur anyway through an alternative standard process. We never denied an alternative standard that was requested for these. So, for example, if a shade tree is required in a particular location and a shade tree would be damaging to their vehicles, where that is, they can swap it for 2 understory trees. So they're putting more trees in, just a different kind of tree that can kind of split the difference, get the middle ground there. So it's things like that we were having to go through extra processes, extra time, and extra cost for applicants and for county staff resources. that we were trying to clarify just to allow that to happen by the code. So that's what those may sections are that she mentioned. And I can answer any questions if you guys have any questions on this stuff.
I see how this affects new car auto dealers going forward, but how does it help the problem that the commissioners are complaining about today?
So
So what,
yeah, there's
what
lots of
happens to
different
help
problems.
this problem?
There's a lot of different problems involved here. One of those, I believe, was of key concern was people retrofitting a site, using a site that was not originally designed to be a dealership, using it as a dealership. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And I think that there are some very specific criteria in here of the amount of space that is allowed to be used for certain things, such as display area. And if you can't provide for that, then you can't do that type of activity there. So I think that addresses that type of.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, John, part of the problem that prompted all of this was these car dealerships that never came in with a site plan. So they were operating along US 19 and 41 without a site plan.
Oh, I know they all come in my office and
Right.
ask me to get them out of trouble.
So now they have to do a site plan, and they'll be subject to these standards. So one of the problems identified by particularly Commissioner Starkey was the overparking of inventory and having to move a car to get to a car and having cars in the right-of-way to get to a car. So that will be taken care of. So once they come in and they get themselves situated properly, we won't have that problem, hopefully.
And the ones that do have an approved site plan, like Elizabeth mentioned, was, they're allowed to operate by their approved site plan.
The other question that I have is, a lot of times from where I sit, part of the problem is, I'll call it a communication problem. If I'm a guy who wants to open a used car lot, well, I found this C2 property over here, and I just throw my cars on there, and I got a little office trailer over here, and I paint whatever the price of the car is on the window, and all of a sudden I'm business, and they have no idea that they needed a permit. They went down to the tax collector's office and they got their business tax receipt. So I guess what I'm asking is, going forward, can you work with the tax collector when they do this to let them know you have to have an approved site plan? Yeah, I can hand you a business tax receipt, you paid your $33 or whatever it is, but you still need to go see the people upstairs before you can legally operate your business.
Sally? Yeah.
Good afternoon, Board. Sally Sherman, Deputy County Administration, Development Services. Mike Wells and I had a conversation yesterday about this issue and how we can help improve collaboration and coordination with people when they come in for their business tax receipt to operate the business, how we need to come up with a process whereby we're pulling them in to make sure that they have the proper zoning, that they have an approved site plan, because like you said, now that code enforcement is going out there, they're having to bring the properties into compliance. So we will be working with the property appraiser's office to try and come up with a process whereby we can improve that. And also, the code enforcement team have been trying to do some educational efforts. Over the past year, there was a sweep that over 60-plus dealerships along 19 and mile stretch were evaluated, and we're still working on trying to get those corrected.
Okay.
Good points.
I also think that there's an arrangement with Fasano's office as well.
Yes,
and that's what I'm asking,
it's
because
multifaceted. It's actually not just this. There's some other things too that happen in other offices that we're coordinating to.
I always thought it would be very helpful if the county used its internet presence to help guide the public, if they log on to the building department site or the planning and development site, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, and maybe there could be some quick Q&A there to help educate them. I get people that walked in my office and they're just shocked at the number of things that, requirements that they have to satisfy before they can do what they want to do. And I think we'd have a lot less code violations if we helped get that information out there a little easier to them.
Yeah,
That's all.
we actually do have it available online for them to be able to do that. We have
good.
some software that they can go through and say, this is what I would like to do, and it'll tell you if the zoning is proper or what you would need to do, and it can actually give you some estimates on costs for permitting and things like that. The problem is that most of the individuals that you're talking about didn't seek it out.
It's true, too.
We can't just shotgun this out to everybody in the county, you know. If they come, there's ways for them to get it if they seek it. We've got several different sources for that, but we still want to streamline it further. So.
Okay, anything else? I guess you're off the hook. Thank you, Brad.
Okay, I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Good job.
All right, so the last item on the agenda is AP9, and that will be presented by my colleagues in Building Construction Services.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission. My name is Esther Oluyemi, Director Building Official for Pasco County. Before you again this afternoon is the BCS 22-0270, which is the revised flood ordinance to Section 1104 of the Land Development Code. We are here today to provide clarity and answers to questions raised 2 weeks ago. So my colleague is distributing and working up all the corrections that we made, and hopefully we can follow each page as we clarify.
Thank you.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Please look at the ordinance, page 9. One of the questions raised on page 9 2 weeks ago was about the change made in 2021. To the side, you will see a drop box there that explains it. In 2021, the legislative transfer the program from the FDOH, that is the Health Department, to the Federal Department of Environmental Protection. And that is according to the Chapter 62. Thank you, Mr. Mpud, for pointing out that. And if you turn to page 10, the question raised there and the answer provided. That is in the development permit and inspection procedures. On this page, we're inserting back the floodplain to make sure that the floodplain was deleted as part of the update, but it is being restored to coincide with its definition in Appendix A of the Land Development Code. So now it will be the floodplain development permit or approval. Okay, and if you can turn with me to page 27. And this is on the variances, the use of the hearing officer. Anthony, can you come up and speak to this?
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. Anthony Mastraccio, Deputy Building Official, Building Construction Services. The hearing officer was created in conjunction with the County Attorney's Office. It's vested through the County Attorney's Office. So the input from BCS or any other department does not exist. And when this was being vetted out by the Senior Assistant County Attorney, it was vetted in the process of hearing some of our our dilemmas and our flood issues that were brought forth to the construction board. It's a board that we attend every 2 months, and what was found is that they were not well-versed in the flood zone, and we had some issues that were posed from those hearings. So in conjunction with the county attorney, they vetted a hearing officer, or it may be multiple, but it's a hearing officer that has knowledge of flood zone and any procedure that we bring forth to that hearing officer. So, and this was, I see that Christy Sims may still be online. Christy had drafted up this in reflect to the hearing officer and the procedure set forth.
Okay, thank you.
So, and the last question and clarity is on page 29. And if you look at the questions, the other page that you have, page 1 to 4, Rebecca Quinn attempted to clarify that issue with that language that was labeled. And we're open to any changes that we needed to do, which we're willing. We've talked extensively with Mr. Mpud, and we're willing and ready when we don't have our back to the wall to come back to the board and see what we can do to work with the board and arrive at what we needed to for the benefit of Pasco County citizens.
All right. Any questions?
Any questions, please?
Are we going to hear from Christy?
She's online, so she can unmute herself whenever she'd like to speak.
If you have any specific questions for her.
Okay. Mr. Gray
Yeah,
wasn't
go
here
ahead, John.
last time, so I just want to kind of give you a little background. I don't know if you watched the last meeting, but
No,
I've been intimately involved with staff, Commissioner Mariano, back in May when this thing was first sent out to the commissioners, and a horizontal roundtable meeting asked both myself and Barbara Wilhite me to provide some kind of technical interpretation for him and her some legal interpretation so he could help understand what the proposed changes were. And since then, I've been working with the staff back and forth trying to understand the changes, and I've learned a lot more about the National Flood Insurance Program than I ever wanted to know in my life. I've even spoken with Ms. Rebecca Quinn on the telephone to understand the role between the federal government and the state government and the county government. I get told, well, all the rules of participation in NFIP are in CFR 44, Part 60 and 59, and I look at those, and then I get handed a state model ordinance, and it's different from what the federal government is, so I got confused. I had all kinds of questions, and she was very helpful in clarifying some of these issues. I'm down to basically one last issue on this, and that is, and I asked the question, and there was some lengthy debate, and Mr. Hansel, who's not here, picked up on this and had some concerns in that in the version of 1104 that's currently in effect today, variance requests and appeals are heard by the Planning Commission. And in this version of the proposed ordinance, the proposal is to give it to a hearing officer. So I asked why, and there was quite a bit of confusion during the last meeting. Nobody quite knew who the hearing officer was, and Mr. Hansel expressed he was concerned. He said if he got pulled over on the way out of the meeting in Dade City and got a ticket from a Florida State Trooper, well, at least he'd know who to go to appeal to, but he wasn't sure how this worked in this ordinance. So since that time, I've inquired a little bit, and I've learned a little bit about the origination of the hearing officer process and how that related to demolition orders. But I'm still confused to this day by two things. On Tuesday morning, was it Tuesday or Wednesday, Sally? We had a WebEx meeting with you and your staff and Barbara Wilhite. And when we got to this particular item, what you guys explained to me was that the hearing officer would be a subject matter expert. And I said, okay, I took some level of comfort in that the hearing officer would be a subject matter expert, given that these are technical issues. I had proposed to staff that perhaps it was wiser to give the approval of variances to the construction board, since they deal with more technical matters of the building code. But what I'm told by other staff is that the hearing officer is not a subject matter expert. So I have two questions, if someone can clarify. Is the hearing officer a subject matter expert? And why does staff want to move the process to a hearing officer? I'm not necessarily opposed to doing that, but I want to understand why you want to do it, and I want to know that this person actually knows about this issue.
I'm waiting to see if, oh, there's Christy.
Christie?
She's there.
Does somebody, if you want me to talk, I can't answer why staff wants to move it to a hearing officer, but I certainly can tell you who the hearing officer is, how we came to have a hearing officer, and I can give you my opinion regarding whether he's a subject matter expert on the subjects that would be required for him to hear and make legal and factual conclusions regarding variances.
Okay.
So either I'm happy to talk about it or answer what I perceive to be the questions, but I certainly cannot answer why staff wants to move it from planning commission to a hearing officer.
Okay. Well, I want to disclose that I had a telephone conversation with Christy the other day. She called me and tried to help me understand how a hearing officer was created and why, and what happened during COVID with the construction board not meeting. So the impression I was left with after speaking with you is that the hearing officer is just a Florida bar member, an attorney, but not necessarily a subject matter expert. They're not an expert in, the Florida building code or the flood issues related to Section 1104 or those in the Florida building code.
Well, in order.
Correct, Mr. Moody.
I'm sorry,
The
Sally.
hearing officer-
Let me just interrupt. Is there some particular reason why we don't just leave it with the planning commission and that solves the problem?
In accordance with, and with all due respect, in Chapter 18 of the Code of Ordinance, it, under the title hearing officer, and you've got that in here, it was saying that appeals for demolition, construction or proposed construction that substantiates improvements based on flood damage prevention ordinance is heard by a hearing officer. When I went online, I saw a bid proposal from our county attorney pursuing hearing officers. And the hearing officer, the way that it was written up, was specifically for a purpose. And that was what was bidded out. That's my understanding of the process. So that's what I went by. And just going by prior experience, and again, there's no written process that I was able to find other than what I was able to find online, where hearing officer services for specific things were bidded out. Prior experience in local governments is any legal representation that's needed is vested with the county attorney's office to secure. Again, this is just over 40 years of experience in local government. I can't hire attorney, but it's all vested with the county attorney's office. And so the use of a hearing officer is only requested when a specific need is made. If you want to leave it, Planning Commission, this was what it was changed to based on Chapter 18. That's what's in Chapter 18 that exists today, that those items will be heard by a hearing officer, and that's why we have it like we have it.
I see Christie shaking her head.
Is that not the case, Christie?
That's not the case. The reference to the hearing officer procedure in Chapter 18 is specifically regarding demolition and appeals of substantial damage and substantial improvement determination.
Okay.
So just as a bit of background, the county first hired a hearing officer back in 2015 when the Board of County Commissioners adopted an ordinance that under certain circumstances allowed people to be trespassed from public property. In conjunction with adopting that ordinance, the county needed to provide some sort of due process or place where a person who was given a trespass warning could appeal to. At that point, it was put out for bid, and the county attorney's office, and I'm not a procurement attorney, so I can't, tell you all of the I's that were crossed and I's that were dotted and T's that were crossed, but about the procurement process. But we retained a hearing officer first to hear appeals from the trespassing ordinance. And shortly thereafter, asked the hearing officer whether he would be willing to hear appeals from demolition orders as well. He agreed, price was agreed upon for that. So those appeals first had gone to the Board of County Commissioners, and then it had been switched to the Construction Board. The Construction Board struggled with them because they can become quite complex and involve, multiple aspects of not just the construction, but then when you throw flood on top of it, construction in a flood zone. Those are often very adversarial hearings, so they take on the nature of a trial, depending on the property at issue and the depth of agreement or disagreement between the county and whoever is trying to repair a property rather than demolish it. So those appeals were then moved to the hearing officer, who again, we already had because we had to retain a hearing officer because of the trespassing ordinance. It then became apparent during the pandemic, the Construction Board had jurisdiction to hear appeals from substantial improvement, substantial damage determinations. And due to the fact that that board meets only every other month, they didn't meet at all during the pandemic, demolition appeals were being held up because the substantial damage, substantial improvement aspect of a demolition when the property was in the flood zone was going to a different fact finder and conclusion maker than the hearing officer. So those were also then rolled over to the hearing officer. The hearing officer is Matt Maggard. Matt Maggard serves as the city attorney for the city of Zephyr Hills. While he is very well thought of and certainly a friend of mine, I have the utmost respect for his skills. I do not think that Matt Maggard would stand in front of this board and profess to be a subject matter expert in all of the issues regarding floodplain regulation that may arise in a variance proceeding. He had his own firm, which has since been acquired, and he is associated with Shoemaker Loop. His hearing availability is monthly and is coordinated through the county attorney's office based on his schedule and the schedule of whichever attorney is prosecuting the case in front of Mr. Maggard. I will note that if variances were to switch from the Planning Commission to the county attorney's office, and let me make it clear, the county attorney's office had nothing to do with the idea to switch it from the Planning Commission. This was something that the building official approached me and told me that she wanted to do. So I merely inserted the reference to the correct section of the code that would provide the procedure for them to do that. The policy decision to remove variances from the Planning Commission to a hearing officer was made by BCS and not at the direction or even with consultation to me. I expressed to Mr. Moody yesterday, and I'll go ahead and express it to the entire board, that having served as the attorney for the construction board for the last 20 years, I also do not believe that the construction board would easily be able to wrestle with the interplay between the county's development regulations, which these are contractors and lay people on the construction board. I do not think that there is anyone that is more suited to hear and determine the interplay between the floodplain regulations and the development regulations than the Planning Commission. Y'all do this every 2 weeks. I think. I was actually hoping to end my career at Pasco County without appearing before you, but that seems to be a goal that I have failed at. But I'm here to answer any other questions regarding the hearing officer, but I told you who he is. I have not asked Mr. Maggard whether he would be willing to hear variances and how much he would charge for them, nor have I gone down the road of figuring out what the procurement process would be to add that into the types of hearings that he hears if it is in fact eventually changed from the Planning Commission to a hearing officer, because there seemed to be some question regarding whether that was going to actually happen. So,
Chair, staff have no problem going back to the original ordinance with the Planning Commission hearing the item.
All right, Sally, thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Christy. I appreciate that.
I also want to let you two know we'd had the discussion about critical facilities. I spoke with Cindy Jolly the other day, who enlightened me and brought up a good point in that most of the things that are contemplated as being critical facilities in the proposed ordinance are already regulated in the Florida Building Code. So I've pointed that out to the others I've been working with. So I don't think there's too much issue there anymore.
Okay. Any other questions? John? Jamie? Same for you?
No, I mean, I don't have a lot of questions. I guess just background, and I know we treaded on this or talked about this briefly before, but just so make sure I understand, this is a requirement in order to maintain the current classification for the flood insurance, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the deadline for this to be done is?
Before September. We have FEMA 5 years visitation in September, and we needed to have this in the books before they come.
Okay, so the changes that are proposed here, and I apologize, I mean, literally all of this whole red line document, literally, you saw it handed out. I got it like 10 minutes ago. So I haven't had a chance to go by it. But again, what is proposed here for the revisions, just to clarify, is only the minimum requirements required to maintain our current
Yes.
rating, correct?
The requirement that requires the NFIP, there is absolutely nothing I have all the subject matter experts. I have the EOC here that can respond to the critical facility. I have the stormwater director here. So everybody's gone through this document, and we've explained this in details to Mr. Moody. So the only thing that we were doing that will have given us more points, we've already backed out of it. That is the ECOSO as the V zones.
Yes.
And we've backed out of
And
it.
that's still, you're still going with that in Chapter 18, that you'll allow the stem walls and the coastal
Exactly,
A zone.
yeah, so.
Yeah, and really, the reason I asked that is because there was other discussion, and I thought I remembered other discussion from the last planning commission meeting where we talked about the potential to, or there was things looked at to go from, I forget, and I'm probably wrong in this, but is it Class 6 to Class 5?
Class 6 to 5. So we have other departments, and that's what I'm trying to explain to you, the stormwater management and also the EOC that are working in conjunction with this is the base. If we can get through this base, at least to secure that we're not losing the 3.1 million that our citizens are getting right now, then we can even think of moving to the next phase.
Okay.
But right now, it's not to drop to the 9, which will means no.
Here to help you out.
Yes.
Laura Wilcoxon, I'm the Assistant Director for Pasco County Emergency Management. I'm also a certified floodplain manager, and part of my role in emergency management is recovery, which oversees our CRS component for that. With the changes that are proposed now, they are the bare minimum that we need to keep R6.
Okay.
If we do not make these modifications at this timing, we really risk going down to a 9, which would lose $2.3 million in flood insurance savings across the community. So we are really, we've been working with Building Construction Services. We've really narrowed it down to just the changes that have to occur to keep that 6.
Okay, very good.
So,
Yeah.
Just a little bit of background, Jamie. The regulation of critical facilities isn't in the current version of 1104, but it's proposed here. And they do get, it appears they get 80 points towards the CRS score, which, I don't know, when I talked to Rebecca, she told me that Pasco County had a community rating score of 6, but that we barely had accrued enough points to keep 6.
Yes.
So maybe the 80 that they get for the critical facilities gives them a little cushion.
Okay.
My take on it is 99% of that's already regulated under the Florida Building Code. Barbara Wilhite had expressed some concerns about like nursing homes and ALFs. Well, I checked, and the Florida Building Code strictly regulates the finished floor elevation of a nursing home. So that's, I don't, whether it's in here, I'm not sure we need to have duplication, but I don't think it does us any harm, because ultimately, when you go to get that building permit, you're gonna get hit with it anyway.
So again, I think part of the, like Mr. Moody explained, it's already in the Florida Building Code, which is the ASC 2414. But majority of the time, when our citizens come for review, and we had to tell them, this is an attempt not to blindside them, for them to see it up front and to be able to give it to their design professional to put it into consideration while doing their design. So it's not at the 11th hour that they're just hearing about it.
Well, as the design professionals, we're supposed to be familiar with the Florida Building Code too, so.
That's what you think.
And I learned something in the process of this, so.
Any other questions? Well, do I hear a motion then to approve, but with the exception of leaving it with the Planning Commission?
I would move to recommend approval of the ordinance with the change that the variances remain with the Planning Commission.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Yeah, opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Chair.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kristen.
Is that it?
That's it.
You're letting us go, huh? Okay.
Dismissed?
Here, motion to adjourn? All right.
Second.
All right. Got it.
Got you, Jamie?
and wildlife depend on you to keep them healthy. Excess fertilizer, grass clippings, trash, oils, and pet waste wash into gutters and storm drains when it rains. Stormwater carries these pollutants directly